Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. This is Laura Steward, and I am your moderator for the event, your host with the most, as they used to say, and I'm showing my age on that one. I'm going to be introducing the people who are going to actually be running the webinar, but I am having trouble sharing my screen and showing it with you, so I'm going to ask Marc or Clint if you could be able to do that when we cut over, and I will have to figure out what's going on with my technology. This is a live webinar, everybody. As you can tell, my webcam died, and now we can't share my screen, but we will get that working. Little housekeeping: in the question pane, please type any questions you have for the presenters, and if you have any technical issues like I'm having, please type them in the chat pane, and I will be responding to you on there, because apparently that is still working just fine for me. So I'd like to introduce you to Clinton Gatewood, our channel chief here at SaaSMAX, and he's going to take over from here on out. Clint, why don't you share your camera so everybody can see your smiling face?
Hey everybody, Clint Gatewood here at SaaSMAX. I am the channel chief here and know a lot of you out there, and a lot of you know me, and I just really gave you a good close up there. So it's all good. We're really happy to be able to give you this presentation and to deliver this type of content. It's really good educational content. Marc will be talking about the success that they're having with the channel, and and we're having a lot of success with them right now, getting ready to kick off our channel accelerator program, which we really won't talk about today, or even at the end of here. We didn't put any slides in on it, but I do have a webinar next week, and I'll remind you. Plus, I'll get you all out an invitation on some joint getting you in front of end clients along with Compliancy Group. They're a very good channel company. They work very well with their channel. And with that, I would like to go ahead and introduce Marc and let him take off with the show. Good to have you back on the show with us, Marc.
All right. Hopefully there we go. Picture is working. I like it. There's little things in life. All right, everybody. Today, let me just kind of know we're having a little tech fun with our computers, but now we're back there. All right. So, thank you very much, both Laura and Clinton, for putting us up today. So, real quick, who I am, and then I'm going to spend some time talking about hopefully showing you how you can serve your clients better and make some more money. All right. So, yes, we are Compliance Group. We are the leader in what is compliance tracking solutions. We're used by about 40 medical associations, most of the hosting services, a lot of the EHR firms, a lot of IT and security firms, consulting firms like an RSM McGladrys, big, these are all folks that either use our service or recommend us to their clients. On the intersection point in between compliance and cybersecurity, which is a big set of the opportunity today, not only do I have a lot of roles and a lot of speaking about the intersection point between compliance and security, I also do sit on I have a couple of different roles at CompTIA. I'm very proud to be. I was on the advisory board and some of their strategic redirecting, and right now I am the co-chair for what is the Business Application Advisory Council. So a lot of the data points I'm going to talk about today are going to be things that not just, let's say, I care about, but also the things that CompTIA, from the perspective of representing of MSPs, as also the other software providers that are in the market and the things that they are seeing as opportunities. So enough of that kind of happy stuff. Let's get to the meat. So compliance as a solution, healthcare, cybersecurity, etc., they're all coming together in a very interesting way right now. And I think there's some great opportunities for you, as whether you want to be called an MSP or a TSP or MSSP, whichever language you want to use. I want to talk a little about what your end client, what the actual end user thinks that your value proposition is. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on with data, with security or cybersecurity, and the human element that is often mucking up the great things that you've done. Spend a little time going through what is the misunderstandings in between compliance versus security, where they intersect, why it's really important. And then lastly, I'm going to go through a case study, and this will hopefully keep you all interested in enough to listen to 20 minutes or a half hour of me talking about all sorts of industry things. I'm going to show you a case study where we had a client in less than 6 months, without even the work that he was doing in his MSP, we were able to help him sign up 20 new clients in 6 months. Okay, and most MSPs I talk to, bringing on 5 new clients a year would be considered an amazing success. So I'm going to talk about how the shift in thinking of value proposition, total solution. And one thing, although I'm going to be talking a lot about healthcare because that's really where I come from, this works with law firms, this works with manufacturing, DoD, all of those areas legitimately have the same set of needs. So let's start off with what is really your business? Okay, when I speak to a lot of MSPs, they're very proud of all the things they do, and they talk about a lot of techie things. But understand, in the eyes of your client, okay, security is not the tech things you do. Security is eliminating the danger of their technology failing on them, okay, or freedom from fear and anxiety. So at the end of the day, if you think of all the MRR work that what you're charging for in a given day, what to the end customer, they're not going to know about what was your tech. They're going to know that, we were able to sleep well at night. I was able to not be concerned about my business failing because this group here that I hired to solve a technology issue is giving me peace of mind. Okay, and if you look at some of the things that are going on, security and risk is one of the largest growing sectors. Okay, it is one of the primary drivers that you see your clients worrying about. Now, what happens, though, is if you take a look at the security issues, and by the way, the data I'm going to be talking about, some of it comes from ConnectWise, Kaseya, CompTIA, Dato. I've tried to take it from the different industry sources that we all know and trust. Okay, this isn't coming from me, and this isn't coming from healthcare. This is coming from what the market is saying. Now, if you look at the security issues, which have gone up dramatically, right, if you look at what 76% of the serious security issues are, they were driven by what I would call as human element issues, lost devices, malware, phishing, or staff disabling features. Okay, so you did the right job, you put it in correctly, they screwed it up. Now, if you look at CompTIA internationally, they've done all sorts of surveys, and what they're finding is one of the biggest, let's say, challenges or failures here is that most people really do believe that what they're doing is good enough. They really, they're in their heart, they don't understand the issues well enough. So therefore, they think what they did was sufficient. And that's a big part of where the opportunity for you as their trusted advisor to move from being a services provider to being a solutions provider by leveraging that set of misunderstandings. Okay? So if you just look at, let's say, some of the big defenses in today's world, whether it's antivirus, spam filters, patch updates, whatever, pop-up blockers, at the end of the day, what you're seeing here, and this information is from Dato, is 93% of the people who were breached had all the right things in place. But if you look at the opposite end of the spectrum, the people who had cybersecurity training had a very low failure rate. Okay, so there's very few people that had true cybersecurity training in place, or in this case, you'll hear me make that connection to compliance, that were vulnerable to what is the most common threats that we're seeing in the market. Now, if you take a look at what is, what's causing it, the two biggest factors, 94% of it are spam phishing emails. Okay, which with all the great things you can do, there's a still propensity of coming through, and then the human element that the staff, that your client staff, maybe some of your own staff, I hope not, didn't understand what they should and should not do. Okay, so if you combine those two things, let's talk about additional data elements. If you look at, let's say, CompTIA internationally, 52% of the security breaches were caused by human error. I've heard the statistic also mentioned by other security experts, saying things that all breaches that have ever occurred only occurred for one of two reasons. You either did not have a policy or procedure in place, or you failed to enforce it. So now let's look at what, as we go a little deeper into the human error, which is causing the majority of the failure. Failure to follow policies and procedures, okay. General carelessness, people just not realizing what they were clicking or opening. But the one that I also want to talk about here is 26% of the time, it was actually IT staff that failed to follow a policy or procedure that ultimately caused the breaches. So I'm going to throw something out here that most people think I'm a little crazy when I use this, but I'm going to take a little bit of a leap and say I'm going to show security, Game of Thrones, and candy and how they all relate. Okay, and if you're in a room, or if you're I usually ask this question, how many Game of Thrones folks we have out there? If you have not seen the whole series, there might be a little bit of a spoiler here, but not enough that you should turn off close your eyes here. Okay, so the first thing, if you use, let's say, security, let's take a Game of Thrones example. These people built castles, really strong, defensible walls, which were designed to keep the bad guys out. All right, think of most of what you do. The efforts you're putting in place are really to prevent prevent threats from getting into your clients' organizations. Okay, the problem is very much like what is a Tootsie Pop. The real problem is the soft, gooey center. You know, it is the human element inside those four walls, inside the castle walls, where the risk is. That if you don't address those things, now I will draw two threads here. One is you're not delivering on the value you took the money for, which is being secure, if you don't recognize these human element issues, the soft side of these issues. And two, your clients don't really understand this. There's a much higher opportunity for you, or greater value, more money you can charge, more stickiness, more appreciation, more clients you can attain if you understand helping them solve the larger problem. So, for those of you who are Game of Thrones folks, this is Jon Snow. If you do not know what happened to him, I'm not going to spoil it for those of you who have not seen all of Game of Thrones. Some really, really bad things happened to him inside the four walls of his castle by his own people. Okay? So, let's draw that threat for you that it is often, that is where the problems occur. Again, you know, for example, if I'm in a room live with people, I'll often say, hey, throw me some examples of where it wasn't caused by a human making a mistake. Okay, and most of the time, there's few people in a room that can show anything that wasn't directly or indirectly involved to either someone didn't have a policy or a procedure in place or someone failed to enforce it. Okay, so moving forward. So why healthcare? And a lot of the MSPs or TSPs I speak with, you know, the normal reaction I get is, you know, I had a dentist or a physical therapist and they were really cheap and they were really small and it wasn't worth me working on healthcare. Okay, well, there's a couple of factors that are changing the world. Okay, first of all, healthcare today is 26% of the U.S. economy. So if you're willing to walk away from a quarter of the economy, I think that's a pretty bad business proposition. I think you should be listening to what's going on. Okay. The other reason why I think healthcare is particularly valuable to the average MSP is the majority of healthcare, the 7 million some odd organizations that are in healthcare. Now, remember, healthcare is not just, and I can go into more HIPAA education here, but that's not the purpose of today. The law changed. There was in 2013, there was a 2-year grace period on enforcement. But so since 2000 and basically what is 2016, the law has been changed that everybody who's in healthcare, any service provider, vendor, MSP, billing firm, lawyer, accountant, software, scheduling software, you name it, though anybody who's involved with providing services where they might touch PHI, protected health information or personal health information, must be HIPAA compliant. So now you have this very large market that is the majority of them, 5 million of them, are small and mid-sized companies. So they're the kind of company that hires an MSP. All right? They're not necessarily the huge hospitals that you think of that are not the kind of people that you and I do business with, or for the most part. Regional hospitals, yes. Now, 400% increase in enforcement. There were some grace periods on the laws. Those grace periods are over. The government sees enforcing of what is HIPAA law, which has a lot to do with cybersecurity and a lot to do with what is ultimately the protection of people's sensitive information. So there was a lot of government money. FYI, a lot of people thought with the change in administration, you heard the new folks that are running HHS as well as Trump's administration saying enforcement of security, or in this case, compliance, HIPAA compliance, is a revenue generator for the U.S. government. Okay, it is not one of the things that they want to get rid of. It's one of the things they want to keep. Now, in those enforcement, the majority of people fail. The failure rate is 70% or higher. Okay, and I'll explain one of the things that you're doing that is potentially contributing to that and why there was a much larger sales opportunity for you to go outside of that. Now, just from the simple thing of, let's say, ransomware, which is probably one of the more hotter topics, 88% of ransomware is aimed at the healthcare market. Okay, partly because the information is more valuable, partly because they are far more vulnerable than some of, let's say, the banks and other, the other places where, let's say, fiduciary or financial information resided are much more, are far more adept at what is protecting themselves. Okay, so big misunderstandings. We're not going to go into big, deep HIPAA here, but I want to give you some areas that I see almost the majority of MSPs I talk to. Compliance and security are not the same thing. They are both equally important, but I can make you compliant and have you not be secure. And unfortunately, you're making your people secure is not making them compliant. Now, one of the things I want to stress here is the enforcement, where the fines are, going to jail, loss of medical license, lossing of banking relationships, reputation in the market. They all have to do with compliance, not with security. Okay, the breach might have occurred, and if you do have a breach, and I'll talk about two stories today. One scenario where a laptop was lost, encrypted, and still resulted in a $2.7 million fine. And I'm going to talk about another scenario where a laptop was lost unencrypted, where there was no fine. Client just basically they had to prove their good faith effort as being compliant, and it took a combination of two things. People like folks working with organizations like mine to make them compliant, and folks working with organizations like yours to make them secure. Okay, the next one I want to talk about, and I'll go a little deeper. So of the four misunderstandings, let's take them each individually. So compliance versus security. Compliance is about your proof of a good faith effort. It is not about your security. Okay, the nomenclature of some of these things intersect. The security risk assessment has the same name. But understand, compliance is about approving good faith effort, not about what security, whether or not you had a level 7 firewall in place, okay, or what your encryption technology was. It's did you make a good faith effort to understand your risks and make sure you had a written remediation plan about those risks, that you had policies and procedures that were considered effective in the way your organization would run, that you had employee training and attestation that you could prove each employee agreed to, that you audited your business associates, and that you managed the incidents as occur. And I'll talk some more examples of where they intersect. Security, on the other hand, is about risk. You could spend an unlimited amount of money and time trying to be secure, but as you guys know, there's still always a chance. So there's all these things about detection and protection and recovery that HIPAA law refers to, but doesn't define, which is really where you folks come into play. So here's where things get a little twisted in the market. Okay, unfortunately, most people, what happens is when they think of HIPAA, okay, they are not realizing what the way the law is enforced. Okay, and the way the law is enforced has to do with three rules. The privacy rule, which really has to do with the way they treat their patients, has very little to do with you. Okay, but where most people get in trouble, most of the MSPs I talk to, where they get into trouble, okay, is the way they look at the security rule. Okay, and when they look at the security rule, they don't understand that the security rule is made up of three sub-rules. Okay, or three audits or assessments that are required. The security or technical audit that most of you are doing and doing a great job of, okay, it was called for in what's called meaningful use MACRA MIPS. It was an incentive program to deploy electronic health records in the United States. It came into existence after the HIPAA law. So what when you're doing this, okay, doing a security technical audit, and you may have some policies, procedures around it, etc., you are not making them HIPAA compliant. You are just addressing this little piece. All right, your client still had this larger problem. All right, 26% of the U.S. economy has this problem. The majority of them are your size client. Go get them, folks. Don't let them get away. Now, the problem is the other rules that are required or the other assessments that are required are your physical audits and your administrative, and also the nomenclature gets a little confusing here. For example, subtitled Privacy Part D audits. If you are not doing all 6 required federal audits, your client, you're not HIPAA compliant, and by the way, you do need to be HIPAA compliant, and your client is not HIPAA compliant. So, for example, I have great respect for many of the other tools that are used in the market. For example, if you take, let's say, Rapid Fire is a great tool. The problem is this is what it's addressing, not addressing the total set of rules. Okay, if you're working with consultants, great. Consultants are fantastic as well. But ultimately, you need to make sure the clients are addressing all of these problems. So the last thing they have to worry about is the breach notification rule. Where this intersects with what you and I do for a living is When your client said, hey, by the way, we lost, we had a laptop that was stolen, so please come and replace it. Great, it was encrypted, maybe it wasn't, that's a different story, lost USB drive, any piece of technology. The problem is, you have to understand that that is not just an issue for you. That is under the breach notification rule, if it was an incident it must be investigated, why, how, etc. When it was investigated, what was the outcome? Was it, what was the cause of it? And then depending on what was the type of breach, a breach that potentially affects more than 500 records, and notice I said potentially. So if you lost a laptop and that laptop had access to their EHR, that is a meaningful breach. By law, your client has 60 days to report it. If they do not, the smallest fine we saw last year was $475,000. Okay, so understand what was just lost laptop, we're going to replace it, was a federal violation that they forgot to report. Okay, so now, by the way, at the end of the year, all incidences, large and small, still have to be reported every year. So even if there were things that you were involved with, a lost USB, for example, those still ultimately have to be reported. Now, to give some examples of why security does not equal compliance, and vice versa, compliance does not equal security, because I do want to stress that both are equally important, are things like that, or the example I gave earlier of Oregon Health. They did lose a laptop. It was encrypted. They were very quick to prove they'd done 6 security risk assessments, one required every year per the law, 6 years back. They hosted on a HIPAA-compliant hosting service. They had a HIPAA-compliant EHR platform. So you ask yourself, why were they fined $2.7 million? Because they had failed to have updated policies and procedures. HIPAA stuff, soft, gooey inside stuff. Why? The laptop was stolen out of a child's hands while the owner was on vacation. And the government's attitude was, how could you have not assessed that people regularly were left with devices from the location, and that there was no definitive set of policies, procedures that outlined when a device like that was not in the office, what were the rules of engagement? That's what they were fined for. Okay, I can turn around and talk about a client of ours. Similar scenario, 30 location client, lost a laptop. We provided all the appropriate documentation proving good faith effort. Government said, okay, great, laptop got stolen, that sucks. We understand. No fine, no corrective action. All right, and the only difference there was ability to prove what was done and the things that you did. Now, malware, we are a lot of folks, a lot of you will tell me, well, Mark, I don't want to touch the privacy side. And I also believe that the client, we did the security risk assessment, they had policies and procedures, in this case, security policies and procedures, and they had done training. Fantastic, except that's not what's required under the law. It's only a piece of it. So, for example, to use the Alaskan behavioral health thing, they did have a security risk assessment. Great. Where were the other 5 audits? They did have policies and procedures, but they were just for security, and they were out of date. They were store-bought, and they did not accurately reflect the way the business ran. And then lastly, their training, although they had very legitimate training, it was done once a year, and with 30% turnover, the government deemed that as negligent and not effective because it meant 30% of the staff went a year or more without training. So those are the kind of real-world examples. Now, one more thing, and now everyone should be paying attention to me here. Lost smart device. Why does that matter to you? Because it was an MSP that was fined $650,000 because a tech went on site, did some work. In that work, they had transferred an email over to their iPhone. That iPhone was then promptly lost. And in the end, the government looked at it and said, you had same thing. You did not adequately address assessing the risks of the organization, and you failed to have policies and procedures. You didn't understand that people took their devices on site. You did, and that they didn't understand that they were not allowed to do these things. Okay, so this definitely applies to you as an MSP. If you have a single healthcare client, you also have to be HIPAA compliant. So what does it look like? Most of the MSPs I talk to, and now I'm going to start talking about where the opportunity to make more money comes from. What you're doing is you are making them secure, but on let's say, a pictorial view of what is HIPAA compliance, you're only addressing pieces of the law. They need to address all of this. So you can make a choice to be a services person that charges a little extra money for some services you provide, or become a solution provider where you're offering a total set of you're addressing all of the client's problems. And in this case, the GUARD, which is our application, addresses everything required under the law. It doesn't just have a security risk assessment. It has all 6 federally required audits. So, for example, by the way, the government does not require a network scan. There is nowhere in HIPAA law in the 700 pages that you will see anything that says you need to do a penetration scan. What you see it says is you have to assess your risks across these 6 specific things, and then depending on what are identified as your risks, because everybody is unique, then you must remediate those risks. And that is where you guys come into play, okay? Because about 20% of every single HIPAA audit will result in about 20% of security-related repairs that need to be done. Encryption, backup, secure messaging. So understand that if you are opening your door up to a whole set of opportunities that you can charge for. They do need to have all of their policies, procedures, all of their training. They have to have things like, it's not good enough that they just have a binder in a corner. There's document version control, individual employee attestation. Individual employees have to log in and attest that they have done this, and they've legally agreed to it. They're business associates. It's not just good enough to say, hey, did we send a BA agreement out? You have to have legal documentation. You have to prove that you did what's called a technical due diligence. Lastly, you have to have incident management. We mentioned to you was just a lost laptop or device. To the federal government was something that had to be reported and monitored. So if we take a little information from data, you'll see that 94% of best practices, backup disaster recovery, employee training, and antivirus malware software represent the majority or the 94% of the best practices for you to do. Why is that so important? Those happen to be the basic tenets of HIPAA compliance. So you can use HIPAA as a differentiator to say, I know you don't understand why we need to upgrade all these things, and you think I'm trying to sell you something, but let me show you how you are breaking the law and how I can help you protect yourself, your patients, and avoid breaking the law. So SaaS versus CAS. So most of the organizations that are on this call, I'm going to presume, are doing a good job with SaaS. And what I mean by SaaS is, okay, software as a service, great. Whether you're AWS, Office, RMM, security, monitoring, etc., you have a great incremental monthly revenue stream that is based on you solving, usually in a cost-plus model. You're spending X dollars on it, you're charging X plus a few pennies, and you're making money. Fantastic. Without going into a big, long, discussion, and actually I just did this on CompTIA, a webinar for CompTIA on this. The problem is your clients are no longer buying that way. Your clients are buying what's called line of business decision making. They have a much larger problem here. So you just want to had many names. Well, we just want to do security. We're not touching privacy or administrative. Fine. Then your client is breaking the law. When they get in trouble, who are they going to be pissed at? Or much worse for you, they're going to end up having a conversation with someone on my team where my team explains what's required under the law, and it's going to become apparent that their current provider is not doing that for them. We don't want to do that. We want to help you solve their issue, charge more. So what is compliance as a solution? And by the way, whether we're going to talk about healthcare or manufacturing, the idea is take a series of services, SaaS offerings, put them together and provide a much better solution for your client. So in the case of HIPAA, our solution justifies all your services. You have somebody on your side, a neutral third party, who is saying, per federal law, they must do these things. Let us do the work for you. It's strategic. We're helping you sell your services. We're helping you stay stickier to your client. What will that drive? Now you're getting application monthly revenue. You're not just getting cost plus. You have a chance to charge, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for something that they need to address that they're not getting right now. Also, what happens is it justifies all your project work. When you're trying to argue why they need to upgrade that server, it's much easier to say, listen, let me show you why you're breaking the law, and here's how we have to fix it. Very simple. This isn't you need to upgrade because I think you're vulnerable. It's the law says you're not allowed to function this way. Now, ultimately, this is about increasing MRR. So I'll talk about more when I go through the example, which is Carlin Bradley. Carlin Bradley, I don't know, average size MSP out of Tennessee. What he decided to do originally, he was actually, I will say this. Notice on his website, actually on his main website, he's listing our seal of compliance. Why is that so important? That gains him clients. Anybody who hits this site knows that he is HIPAA compliant, that he is a third-party service that is verifying or validating that he is HIPAA compliant. For example, if you are a client of ours, you end up in our HIPAA Alliance Marketplace. There's actually an opportunity for you to find clients this way. So let me show you how we did this for Carlin, okay, or for Paul Redding. Now, Paul originally was reluctant to be in healthcare. He was concerned about the risks. He was concerned about what would happen. Did he have to change the way he sold? He was concerned about some of the operational challenges. He started working with us, okay? What we did is we gave him everything he needed, and this isn't about me today, this is about adding SaaS, but we gave him everything he needed to truly use healthcare as a door opener to break into new clients, okay? Now, change his business, okay? 20 new clients in 6 months, not so shabby. You got about 40% of them were project work, but 60% of them decided to stay with him because he opened the door doing security risk assessment through us and doing some of the project work. They stayed on as managed service clients. Everything he needed was in place. Full marketing and sales support. For those of you who have not worked with us, we have coaches, we have channel managers, we have content for you. We will help you do this. The one thing that I found really interesting was Paul said after working with us, we actually provided a whole bunch of time savings and increasing of efficiency for him. It was one of the big things. It saved a pretty hefty percentage, like 30% of his time was recouped because he was not trying to meander through trying to do something that he didn't have a tool. By having a total solution, he was able to make a lot more, not only garner more business, but garner it with less expense. So what did that look like? He took monthly, instead of adding a SaaS, incremental, an extra, $5 a month per user, he was able to start off by saying, I am providing a whole new solution for you, and you are going to pay for it, okay? And I've seen, 100% margin on it. I've seen folks charge 300% margin on it. Because of the nature of the way HIPAA works, by law, we are helping them identify their gaps, their risks. There's immediate opportunity to fix those risks by getting involved with additional revenue engagement, which is project work. You may choose to bundle it into MRR. I leave that up to you. But most of these folks, for $3,000 to $20,000 worth of additional revenue of project work that was immediately justified, you don't have a choice. Breaking the law, you have to do it. He did convert about 60% of them became full MSPs, of which he also increased about 25% increase in rates. So he was able to up from $150 to $175 to $200 per seat because he added all the services called for under, in this case, HIPAA, encryption, backup, and secure messaging primarily. He said he saw about a 20% increase in reduction in efficiencies that caused about a reduction of about 20% of his cost to deliver on a client. So, real kind of just to give you a sense of this, what he saw was, and I'm choosing the less than 30 location client, although there are many that are much larger, there are many that are smaller. A lot of MSPs I found are afraid of what is the standard single office client. If you look at it this way, that one client, you got additional monthly revenue for the application you can charge. Okay, you have what is an MRR of services that you're asking. So in general, you're able to add about $5,000 a month for each one of these clients. Now, this is one on the smaller side. I've seen other folks that are adding $20,000 a month in MRR through healthcare. You also saw remediation work that, depending on which client, $5,000 to $30,000 worth of revenue. So hopefully what you're seeing here is this can be very lucrative for you. It does not require you to step outside of your comfort zone. Basically, we are here to help you with the work, and hopefully you will take us up on that. So, in the shameless plug arena, and I will do this very quickly just because I know you guys hopefully will not find this overburdensome. So we are a total compliance solution. My company, we have always been auditors. We've been auditors for some of the largest and largest organizations in the United States. Most of the folks that you consider the people you would trust are working with us already. All right. Now, what is a total solution? The mistake that most people make is that you are throwing technology at a problem that is human related. So if you do work with us, you get not only you and your clients get a compliance coach. We are going to hold the hand of the end users through the process. You don't have to work with all that privacy gobbledygook, the stuff you don't want to touch, business associates, training of employees. Don't worry about it. We have coaches in place. Those coaches take care of all those efforts. Everything you need to illustrate compliance, which is where people get in trouble, is built in. So all the reports, we have our free audit response program. If they run into a jam, you guys don't have to answer that. We will step up and help them prepare for their audits. Seal of compliance, pretty important thing. Okay, for a covered entity, what the data is showing that if they have a seal of compliance on their website, and increases their patient conversion by about 17%. Now, by the way, we've seen that also in the vendor market as well. I have one hosting service who said having our seal on his website garnered him a $1 million a year client. He was up against another client, another service that did not have a seal. They chose him because of our seal. So the last thing is the issue of maintaining compliance is kind of, that's where the ugly details are in. Built into the platform is addressing all of it. So what it looks like, and if you think of that wheel I showed you earlier, all 6 required audits, full what is remediation plan. The system identifies the gaps. You guys work on the security ones. We'll help them with the rest of them. Once you've done with that, the majority of the problems are going to be policy, procedure, and training related. So, by the way, when I talk about policies and procedures, security, administrative, privacy, and by the way, folks, PCI. So if you're chasing PCI business, it is also built into the platform. Same thing with all the training. HIPAA training, fraud, waste, and abuse, and PCI training are all parts of the platform. Document version control, if they're using their own, this is, I won't go into the great detail, but they have to be able to prove what they did and did not do every year. Individual employee attestation. Let me give you an example of why this is so important. We had a client, one of the people on their staff accessed their boyfriend's mother's medical records. That's a pretty serious HIPAA violation. You would think they're going to go to jail. Because of the way our attestation model works, the client was able to go in to meet with the court and say, look, we have an effective compliance program. We can absolutely prove that. Why? Because this employee, we can prove logged in on August 14th at 2:42 in the afternoon. She had specifically legally attested that she read and understood that policy. So we did everything we could to prevent this from happening. We had a monitoring and auditing function in place, so we saw that she did this and we fired her for it. We had disciplinary guidelines. And that's the kind of stuff we want to do for you, okay, for your clients. Business associate management, you do want to sign ABA agreements, folks. They are actually good for you. They protect your firm. What they are saying is everyone agrees they got to be HIPAA compliant and that you're all responsible for yourselves. You're not responsible for each other. Last thing is incident management. So things like the laptop, there's a lot of other examples that I can go into in greater detail, but it's not just that they sent it to you to get fixed. There's a whole bunch of other things that need to happen at a federal level. So do know that is when we say total, we mean total. Seal compliance, HIPAA hotline. I hear a lot of MSPs, their frustration is you do not want to be dealing with the call from the client about, my patient called in and they asked me if I'm allowed to do, something about in the exam room question. We'll handle all that for you. Okay, we are bi-coastal. We have offices in New York and LA. So 7 to 7 in any time zone in the country, we will pick up and answer those questions for you and or for your client. Lastly, for you guys, if you are a reseller or user of our platform, we have something called the HIPAA Alliance Marketplace. I have close to 50,000 users on my network across the country. They log in on a regular basis to try to find vendors that they know are HIPAA compliant because they know they have to be compliant. They know their vendors have to be HIPAA compliant. So if you're working with us, we absolutely will help you find new clients. Separate of helping them traditional MSP services of the repair of their work, the ones that are just looking around that maybe weren't using anyone before, they're looking for people like you to actually do business. Also, not a bad place for you to look for for support if you're dealing with parts in healthcare. So, summary, and then we can get to ask some questions. Leads, we have referral and reseller options, so you can pick your poison. We have full compliance as a solution sales and training support. Proposals, educational monthly webinars. We have a whole partner portal to educate you. I have channel managers whose job is to work with you to build out how to sell your current clients, how to develop marketing plans to go after new clients. We will give you names to go chase. I have a very large national database. I love sharing it with my partners. We like more success stories like Paul Redding over at Carlin Bradley. So this you've kind of heard me talk about. Let's talk about for today. For folks that you do decide to move forward with us today, you have to buy from us. You don't necessarily have to pay me in the next 7 days, okay? But if you choose it to work forward with us and you remind us of the code SaaS, we will extend a 25% discount over all of our startup work for you. The other thing I do highly recommend is we have what's called our free HIPAA compliance checklist. Download it for yourself, okay? Take a look at your own organization, and you'll quickly see whether or not you're HIPAA compliant or not. If you're not, understand you cannot do business with healthcare. It is negligent. It is considered gross negligence. It has lots of fines or so associated with it. But I would implore you to look at it the other way. Become HIPAA compliant. Go after this very lucrative market. It's also a great tool with your clients. When the client says, I think I'm all set. Hey, let me just go through these 6-8 questions with you. If you can answer them, we're all set. If you can't, then you got a problem. All right. So thank you hopefully we did good. We got this all done in 40 minutes. Clinton or Laura, not sure if there were questions, things that we can clarify, let me know.
Sure. Just right here, let's jump just to break in here just a bit as Marc was talking about Paul and his type of company and how much business they were able to bring them. From those conversations, we put a program together here at SaaSMAX called our Channel Accelerator Program, which Marc is working with us on to help all their clients and all of our partners that are working with them to get clients. That'll be kicking off in the next 3 weeks or so. We still have a couple slots available for partners, and we're doing a webinar next week, so I'll make sure you get some information about it. But it's a great way to expand and grow your company and have a great partner like Compliancy Group coming to the meetings, to the end client meetings, getting that business closed for you and helping you push all those new clients. So we're really, really excited about that. And questions. Laura, what kind of questions you have out there?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you
now.
Yeah, it's been one of those extreme tech challenge days for me today here in Florida. I'm thinking all that rainy weather has impacted some stuff. We have a question that popped up. You mentioned the 25% discount off the startup work. Can you provide more detail what the startup work entails, cost, details of work, etc.?
Sure, it's a great question. Okay, so we have, if you want, so there's 2 models. If you want to be a referral partner, use our software. You can buy our software or be a referral partner. There's no cost associated with it too. If you do want to be a full reseller, what we do with resellers is we realize that 2 things. You need to be HIPAA compliant, and 2, in making you HIPAA compliant, that's great. We also need to teach you, and we're going to invest a lot of time and resources in, I have a lot of clients that, I hear a lot of people, they're distrustful of vendors, they're not really going to help me. In this case, we really do. You get a dedicated channel manager whose job is to help you sell. Okay, so we build out 90-day marketing programs. We teach your staff, tech staff, sales staff. We help you do outbound marketing campaigns, etc. So all of those things, we have a one-time setup charge. It's $3,000. So if you were, it would be in this case $2,250 because you are using the discount. What that does is it covers all of that. Now, our commitment to you, just so you don't say, hey, Marc, that's a fair amount of money. 1, you can always start as a referral partner, which has no cost. Let us help you close a client or 2 and prove it to you. 2, we tried very hard, and our goal is to help you sell your first 5 clients, whether you're converting your existing or new clients, in the first 90 days. So we hope that we will be able to prove to you that you will absolutely get your money back. But that is, to answer your question, that is the cost, the one-time cost that an MSP has. One last piece of that is, once you have 5 clients on billing, we no longer charge you. Okay, so for example, year 2, you still need to be HIPAA compliant. You still need to use our services. Understand we do not charge you if you have more than 5 clients on billing. So it's one of the things we try to do. Laura?
Laura, you may be on mute.
Question.
Okay, here we go again. I'm telling you, it's always fun when you do anything live. I'm trying to combine a couple of questions here together because they seem to be on a similar vein. When we go to become HIPAA compliant, does that reach every single level of an organization? And how long typically does it take to make sure everybody understands the way they have to interact?
Okay, so great question. There's really 2 parts to that. Understand, technology is or is not HIPAA compliant. Organizations are HIPAA compliant. Okay, so by concept, it is your organization and an overall assessment of its risks. The policies, procedures, the training are presumed to be required across everybody. Okay, so your question of, let's say, in an organization, yes, everybody, if you are involved with healthcare, dealing with PHI, everyone has to do this. Now, what happens is some organizations are afraid of that because what does that mean? Is that going to take a lot of time away? No, for the average organization, unless there are some inequities, but most of the time, what you need is 1 to 2 hours a year for your staff to go through the process of attesting, reviewing the policies, procedures, and the training. They just and they log into our website, they have their own username and password, they go through this training, they attest that they have agreed to it, legally they're going to follow it, and you're done. So 1 to 2 hours, okay? Now, for an organization in general to become HIPAA compliant, okay, I am very reticent or skeptical when I hear people say, well, Mark, I spoke to XYZ company, and they'd say I can go online and I'm going to do a couple of checklists, maybe I'm going to do a network scan, and I'm HIPAA compliant. It shouldn't take more than 3 hours. I will gladly spend a lot of time explaining why those solutions get audited and fail and get fined millions of dollars. But let's not for today's call. You got to do this, and you have to do this properly. So to do it properly, our goal is a series of half-hour go-to meetings, 30 minutes at a shot, roughly 2 hours of prep work. Most folks, 5 to 8 meetings like this, get it done. So somewhere in between 20 to 30 hours is what it takes for us to make the average organization HIPAA compliant. And by the way, we don't need everybody. We just need usually 1 or 2 people on staff. We spread it out over, let's say, 90 days, so it's not too cumbersome on any one person. But that's what it takes for an organization to be HIPAA compliant. And yes, the whole organization needs to do so.
Okay. Another question. Do you follow NIST, HITRUST, or your own methodology for the actual security risk analysis?
Fantastic question. Okay, so whether it is NIST, so we follow NIST and ISO guidelines. Okay, we also follow something called SCORM as far as the way we do our trainings. HITRUST, folks, is a brand name. It's like saying I want to go buy garbage bags, go buy Glad. Okay. There are some additional things that HITRUST does really well that has to do with security protocols, but in today's world, now that GDPR is here, or something called FedRAMP, which clearly outline the security requirements of a client, HITRUST is a brand name. By the way, totally respect those guys. They have a great position in the market. But if you do have clients saying that, it's like a client walking up and saying, I want to use I want a Dell laptop. Well, if I can give you an IBM that is stronger, better, and cheaper, why don't you? No, I want a Dell. So we do follow what is the national guidelines, which is NIST and ISO. Now there's also FedRAMP and GDPR. But HITRUST, like I said, is just a brand name, so it's not something we follow.
Okay, and just a reminder to everybody: take this opportunity to type your questions in the question pane. There's a question around the whole idea of compliance as a service. It's a little hard to follow the thread here. Okay, so the question is, compliance as a service. Is it really like software as a service where we don't do anything once we start, it's all out there in the ether, or is there something we have to physically keep doing?
Okay, so the Guard, which is our solution, is a SaaS service. Okay, so it's software as a service. By definition, software as a service is, yes, something that a piece of technology is doing something on your behalf that once you load it up, you don't have to worry about it. Okay, why the term of compliance as a solution and why I use that terminology is what the real point I'm trying to make here is the client has a much larger need than just the service you are providing from a security perspective, okay? And that what you want to do is understand that because that's really what your client's problem is, if you continue to hold the line that you address security and only security, you're going to do one of two things. You run the risk of the client being frustrated, saying, okay, if you're only going to address security and I can find somebody who's going to address all of this for me, I'm going to go to somebody else. So if you have foregone, you will lose a client. The other side of it is there's really a fantastic opportunity for you to help the client on a broader level. Like, so when I talk about the idea of compliance as a solution, I'm really trying to advocate for you that there are lots of other components of this that do not have to do with traditional IT-related work, policies, procedures, training, the incident management, etc., that you can be a part of, in essence, or I'm sorry, when I say be a part of, you can benefit by differentiating your firm and financially without having to do any work. Or that work falls on the software or let's say, in this case, my organization to deliver that value of which you get paid for. So hopefully that's a good question, and thank you for asking it.
Yeah, and that's all the questions we have coming in from our audience here today. And there's some really, really great questions, and I know what will inevitably happen afterwards is just as I'm about to say, okay, we're getting ready to close the webinar, somebody will type one at the last second. So this is the last call for questions. Marc, I know that when I had my MSP, we had a large healthcare vertical, and way before I even knew of your company, I was working with somebody who helped me be HIPAA compliant, and it totally did make a huge difference in landing clients. They would hear that, they would see our certifying documents, and all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, okay, well, we're signing with you. And they always signed for monthly recurring contracts because they just needed somebody that understood it and was certified, and they felt that they were protected. So I'm excited that your product is out there and that you were able to do this webinar for our listeners and the members of SaaSMAX today. Clint?
Fantastic.
Clint, you're on mute.
There we go. So more technical difficulties we create ourselves, user error, not so much technology, right? So no, we've been working with Compliancy Group for about a year now, a little bit longer than a year. It's a great relationship. You can't ask for a better partner out there from, being a solution provider, a reseller, an MSP, whatever you want to term yourself there, but most of your MSPs here today. But and don't think that your clients don't need this. I talked to a lot of managed service providers. I put a lot of managed service providers in a room with Joe over at Compliancy Group, which is their channel manager. They're like, well, my clients are covered. And we start going through things, and they're like, oh, maybe they're not quite so covered. And then they want to think about it. And then within a week, they're back saying, yeah, I need to get signed up and get going. I got a client ready to go. If you go out and talk to your clients about this and really propose what Compliancy Group is doing, you're going to find very quickly that a lot of your clients are going to be like, yeah, I do want that. I do want to talk about that. So, I think we've signed up 4 or 5 partners in the last couple of weeks with Compliancy Group, and a lot of them have already got clients ready. So they've already got deals sold. And talked to one guy on Monday, and he was okay about it. He really liked it, wanted to do it, but then he called me and said, hey, I got a client. I already talked to a client, and within 2 days he had a closed sale. So it is a good thing.
We like this.
Yep. So thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Laura, thank you so much for all the work that you do to provide this great content and getting everything. There's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes, and I really want to thank Laura for getting this set up, arranging the calendars, the slide decks, everything that she does for us. So thank you very much, Laura, as well.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you, everybody.
We'll have the recording up shortly and get that all sent out to everybody that asked for it. Have a great day, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.